The Detroit Lions have two superstar wide receivers. The first, of course, is Amon St. Brown, who's coming off an all pro season where he put up over 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns through the air. But now in 2024, the Lions have a second. Jameson Williams, the former 12th overall pick and Alabama alumni, had a slow start to his NFL career, but now in his third season, the game is starting to slow down, and the star that Jameson Williams is starting to shine through. And today, we're going to take a look at Jameson Williams, take a look at what he's done throughout the 2024 season, ending it off with the shining day and shining performance of his career so far in his best career day against Jacksonville just this past weekend, and talk about how good Jameson Williams has officially become for the Detroit Lions. Now, Jamo is a third-year wide receiver. He was the former 12th overall pick from the University of Alabama in the 2022 NFL Draft. Now, a big reason as to why Jamo's career started off a little bit slower than most is due to his torn ACL that he suffered in the national championship game in 2022 as Alabama was facing off against Georgia. Now, with that being the case and with him tearing his ACL, a lot of teams ended up turning their backs on Jameson Williams, saying that they wanted an immediate contributor for the offense and that they didn't have time to wait for the playmaker to recover if he were to recover at all and return to the state he was before. Brad Holmes didn't have a problem with this, however. He said that, we'll take Jameson Williams, the explosive, speedy playmaker, and we'll redshirt him essentially. We'll give him that first year to train, to recover, to rehab, and in year two, we're going to see Jameson Williams return to form. Now, in 2021, Jameson Williams' college career was spectacular. With 79 receptions, 1,572 yards, and 15 touchdowns through the air, Jamo was one of the best receivers in college football. He averaged 19.9 yards per reception and was, again, one of the best players, one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in all of college football. And there was a good reason he was widely considered to be the best receiver in his class. Now, after taking a majority of his rookie season to rehab, he did play the final 4 games of the NFL season, where he had one reception for 41 yards and a touchdown versus the Minnesota Vikings, and a rush that went for 40 yards just a few weeks later versus the Chicago Bears. Jamo's rookie season was short-lived, right? It was just a couple of games. It was just a couple of touches, but those touches amounted to over 80 yards of offense and an offensive score with just 2 touches of the ball. It was clear that Jameson Williams' explosiveness was going to be a key factor to his game, and everybody was excited for 2022 for him to take that next step forward. Unfortunately, Jameson Williams really didn't do that. After suffering and facing a suspension, a 4 game suspension to start the NFL season the year after in 2023, Jamo got off to a slow start. Wasn't able to be with the team throughout training camp, really wasn't able to be with the team throughout the first couple of weeks of the NFL season. And I think that really impacted his start to the NFL season. Right, in 2023, Jamo certainly took a step forward with 24 receptions for 354 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. He was a contributor. He was a here and there deep shot threat that every once in a while would come up with a large play, but was far from consistent and definitely had some problems to work on, including dropping the football and just creating some separation and connecting with Jared Goff on a more consistent rate. When the playoffs came around and towards the end of the season, Jameson Williams got better. In the playoffs, he had 6 receptions for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns and did improve as a receiver, did seem to kind of start clicking with Jared Goff a little bit more. And it was capped off with an NFC championship performance where he put up 2 touchdowns, one on the air and one on the ground, and had nearly 100 yards of scrimmage, being one of the line's best offensive performers. Now, despite the slow start in his second season, a lot of people still had faith in Jameson Williams. A lot of people said that throughout training camp, he looked phenomenal. He looked like a more professional, a more mature wide receiver. Him and Jared Goff had the chemistry that they did not have a season ago. And it was the storyline of the offseason that Jameson Williams was the breakout candidate that we all thought. Now, 2024 kicked off really well. He started his campaign with a 100-yard receiving day and a touchdown versus the Los Angeles Rams. And through 8 games of the NFL season, he's already matched his career high in receptions, has far surpassed his career high in yards with 538, as well as doubling his touchdown production from a season ago with 4 touchdowns through the year. He also has 5 rushes for 34 yards, and while he hasn't quite been able to pop one for a big rush, he does have 4 first downs on those 5 rushing attempts. Now, a lot of people are still hesitant on Jameson Williams, and a lot of that has to do with the off the field issues. We've seen Jameson Williams put up big numbers week after week after week, and in fact, in 6 of his 8 contests, Jameson Williams has over 70 receiving yards on the day. He's been fantastic for the Detroit Lions in 2024, but a lot of people are still questioning, and a lot of people are still hesitating due to the fact that Jameson Williams was suspended again and could potentially be facing a third suspension in the near future. Now, all 3 of these violations, I guess all 2 that he's faced so far, are things that are pretty easy to look past, right? The first suspension in year 2 was, of course, the gambling one, where he was betting on college basketball in a team hotel, which technically counted as a team facility, which means it was against the NFL policy. The second suspension, we don't entirely know, but it was having to do with PES, performance enhancing substances, which could be anything from a dietary change to a medication change. And I've heard a lot of different stories, but it wasn't steroids, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't anything like that that was going to really severely hurt his career. And it's not really something to be concerned about from a decision making standpoint. So, a lot of people are really hesitant because of those suspensions, but the play that he's put out on the field this year has been nothing short of spectacular for the Lions. And over the last 2 games, Jameson Williams has arguably had his best 2 as a Lion. In week 11, week 10 versus the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football, Jamo had 3 receptions and 53 yards for 3 first downs in Houston. Statistically, that may not seem like a lot. Statistically, that might not seem like an incredible performance, but taking a look at the receptions that Jamo had, they sparked the offense. They sparked scoring drives, and they were some of the toughest catches that he's had to make throughout his 3-year career so far, including the last catch that he made where he was sandwiched by defenders, got hit incredibly hard, was even taken off the field after the play, but found a way to hold on to this football and get the Detroit Lions a first down. It was a gritty, a tough performance, much like the Detroit Lions as a team on Sunday Night Football in Houston, but Jamo made the most of his opportunities, and in his return, had 3 receptions for 53 yards and 3 first downs. He followed that up against the Jacksonville Jaguars this past weekend with 4 receptions for 124 yards, which is a career high for Jamo, as well as capping it off with a touchdown. A 64-yard score put him over the top for his career high day, and he was a phenomenal playmaker. He was a massive for the Detroit Lions in that game. And of course, winning by so many points, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, you probably should have put up good numbers. You probably should have put up a pretty good career day. But the fact remains that Jamo is now coming off of the best game of his NFL career and is gaining momentum as the playoffs approach. Now, for the season, Jameson Williams is on pace, even with the 2 game suspension, to put up 41 receptions, 914 yards, and 7 touchdowns through the year. And without the suspension, Jameson Williams was on pace for 51 catches, 1,143 yards, as well as 8.5 touchdowns through the year. That is a Pro Bowl season. That is a star wide receiver season. That is a top 30, top 20 wide receiver in the NFL by the production, and that is the Detroit Lions wide receiver 2. And not only is that the Lions wide receiver 2, that is the Lions' 5th weapon on offense, as Jameson Williams ranks 5th in touches among the Detroit Lions. So he's doing that with far fewer carries than guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Sam Laporta. And we will talk about those touches, but first, I want to put into perspective what Jameson Williams looks like across the NFL. Again, despite missing 2 games to suspension, Jameson Williams is still top 30 in the NFL in receiving yards, which is right up there with wide receiver one type of numbers, a low end wide receiver one. He is second in the NFL in yards per reception, averaging 21.5 yards per catch. He's 19th in the NFL in touchdowns, tied with a lot of other players down there, but still, again, top 20 in scores for wide receivers, as well as third in the NFL in yards per target. So while he may not be a volume wide receiver quite yet, it is pretty clear that Jameson Williams has emerged as one of the most explosive players in football. He is one of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL and can certainly take any touch that he gets 60 yards to the house, much like we saw against Jacksonville this past weekend. If Jameson Williams wasn't suspended for those two games, he's probably up there in the top 15 in receiving yards, as well as probably top 10 in touchdowns. He is having a fantastic season. Before his suspension, he was top 5 in receiving yards and top 5 or top 10 in receiving touchdowns in the NFL. He is having one of the most explosive breakout campaigns that we've seen for a long time on the Detroit Lions. And nobody seems to be giving him credit because of the mistake he made earlier in the season. I'm not ready to give up on Jamo, and in fact, I think that Jameson Williams is a superstar in Detroit. Now, again, going back to that receptions thing, he is third on the team in receptions and fifth on the team in touches. Montgomery is first with 137. Gibbs is second with 133 on the ground. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta both have more receptions. But despite that, Jameson Williams is right up there with Amon-Ra St. Brown to very nearly lead the Detroit Lions in receiving yards. He's the most explosive weapon on the Detroit Lions. He is the most efficient weapon for the Detroit Lions, and he is blossoming into a superstar before our very eyes. So with that being said, that is all for you guys today. Let me know your opinions down in the comments below about Jameson Williams' 2024 season. Very curious to hear your guys' opinions and your guys' concern about the suspension, as well as your excitement about Jamo's breakout season so far. I think he's a budding superstar. He is so explosive and so electric on the field. He's sparked the Detroit Lions offense a couple times versus Houston, a couple times versus Jacksonville. I think it's only going to get better from here. So with that being said, that is all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.